Okay, deep breath. I'm Reverend Dawn from the Phoenix Congregational Fellowship, which is growing into something new and exciting, the Anamesa Communion.
Hi, Dawn.
We're beginning a, what?
Said hi, Dawn.
Hi, Ian. We're beginning a series called I've Been Meaning to Ask, a series about curiosity and courage and connection. It's a series focused on community, how we build it, repair it, and sustain it. And since we're in the process of building an Anamesa community, this is a really great way to start. So with me today are two good friends and a new friend. Reverend Ian McDonald, you can wave.
Hello.
Is from New Church Sherman Oaks in California, and he's the other half of this birthing Anamesa communion. Also with us is my old in years of knowing each other, not age, dear friend, Pastor Carol Taylor from United Church of Beloit in Wisconsin.
Thank
to
you.
say it that way. Carol is a partner, and I was thinking about this earlier. She's like an ally in what we're doing here. And last is Pastor Bob Cooper, who lives in South Carolina. Where in South Carolina, Bob?
Somerville, which is about 20 minutes outside of Charleston. So pretty
Okay.
close to the ocean.
Nice.
And he's working really closely with Reverend Ian in building the Anamesa. And so I said, I'm Reverend Dawn, and I'm based in Indiana on the western edge of Eastern Time. We're hoping to use this time to get to know each other through a series of questions. And you'll get to know us, and hopefully we can share this time. And together we'll learn how to have some of these conversations that we're going to need to build and navigate the new normal in what we hope is a post-pandemic world that has lots of room for those of us who are Jesus followers. So let's get started. Our guiding question today is, where are you from? Now that's a question that feels like it would take 5 seconds to answer, but where we're from is a lot more than just a geographic location. That said, Ian, where were you born, and how does your birthplace influence you?
My original bio back in my days of advertising began as such. I was born in a place where people go to die, where heat strokes outnumber the cockroaches, or maybe cockroaches outnumber the heat strokes. No one has lived long enough to know. You know where that place would be?
Florida.
Florida. I grew up, as my kids always like to be reminded, on a small beach, a little island in the Gulf of Mexico. And, you know, it was, I think, dealing with people that were transient, you know, they not transients, but they would come and they would go. You know, you had people there for either a week in the summer or 2 weeks in the summer. So I had week-long friends or 2-week-long friends. In the winter, you had grandparents, because I never had any grandparents. I had adopted grandparents that would be there for, 2 months, 3 months, and then they would go away. And some years they would come back, and some years they wouldn't come back. And I think that really influenced the way I met people.
Yeah.
It was really profound. It made it easy for me just to, go up and talk to anyone. And when you had a sailboat, I had a catamaran. So people, always were interested to know about it. I'm like, well, I'll take you out for a ride. And I would always take strangers out on the boat for a quick sail. And
Interesting.
Mhm.
I think that really shaped the early, not going to go too,
You.
the early me, which is carried on to where I am today, exactly where I am today.
Good,
Yeah.
good skills for a pastor.
Especially dealing with,
Strange people. I mean, strangers. Yeah.
I think it really
I
helped me
resemble that remark.
when it came to dealing with older people,
Yeah.
and understanding that they might not be here tomorrow.
Mhm.
I got very used to making friends with somebody, and then the next day they weren't there, and literally were no longer ever coming back.
Mm.
So
Oh.
that was an early,
Carol,
early
Carol,
thing.
what about you? Where'd you grow up and how did that, or where were you born and how did that influence you? We just lost Bob.
You
Yeah.
start with why?
Gotta
Was
love
it something, it
technology.
must have been something Ian said.
Well, clearly.
I took his
Um,
story. I read his bio and I took his story.
I was born in northern Minnesota, don't you know?
Minnesota.
Um, Bob's coming
Welcome
back.
back, Bob.
Yay.
All right.
Yes. No worries. So I was born in northern Minnesota, and my parents moved to Beloit, which is southern Wisconsin, when I was not quite 3. So I really have no memories, or very vague memories of living in Minnesota. There is a photograph of me standing on the sidewalk with snow higher than I am on either side when I was like, 2.5. But otherwise I've lived in Beloit basically my whole life. So, and Beloit is it's diverse, especially for the size of our town for Wisconsin. Wisconsin, the big cities are fairly diverse ethnically, but smaller towns aren't. Beloit is a small city, and we have always had a fairly diverse population, and that's been an influence for me. My husband and I have always had wide variety of friends, and I that has been very helpful in my ministry because I've been able to renew some connections and so on, and then build new connections, and work with a range of pastors and churches and communities here to do some good stuff in town.
Do you own one of those cheese heads?
I do not, no.
Oh, okay, just wonder.
I prefer Tundra Dweller to Cheesehead.
Okay. I actually have a cheese head in a closet here. Alex,
You do, that's awesome.
Alex, I mean, Okay, Bob, you're up. Where are you from and where were you born and how does that influence you?
I was born in a small town in the middle of the Mitten. I'm from Michigan, a little town called Clare. The closest decent sized city would be Mount Pleasant, which is where Central Michigan University is. So if you get an idea, we do a map, so it's like there. Anyway,
Everybody we know from Michigan does that.
That's right. That's how we know where we're from. But I was born there, small community. Our house was 3 miles outside of this town, and I lived on a couple of acres where across the road was a cow farm, a dairy farm. On one side was a sheep pasture. On the other side was a cornfield, and in the back was woods. And it was a dirt road, middle of absolutely nowhere. But I didn't grow up there. Most of my childhood was not there because when I was 7, my folks split up. My mom took us kids and we moved to Flint, and we lived in Flint. I grew up in literally the projects of Flint and some other areas near downtown. And so as far as how that colored my world, it kind of began me on this journey of perspective. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I come from a very small world where, like, my father will live his entire life in this small community. That's just, he was born there. He's very, very likely to pass there. And that's close to 90 years now. And so his worldview is kind of contained in that space. I was kind of forced from a country rural setting into a very urban setting at a young age. And so I kind of look at the world from two sets of eyes. I've been on both sides of things, and as life goes on, I find that I keep finding myself on both sides of things, where I have this perspective and I have this perspective, and I really kind of like that. It's weird because I'm not sure lots of times where I stand on things, but I can see this is what this person thinks and this is what this person thinks. I may not agree with them, but I understand why they think that way. And so I guess I would say I'm a product of the city, because that's where I spent most of my life. I'm used to traffic and bright lights, but also fairly comfortable when it's dark and quiet and there's crickets. So
Crickets.
Yeah.
I was born in a small town and grew up in a small town of about 6,000 in Texas, South Texas. So I'm a full-fledged child of the South. My mother's side of the family, I mean, my parents were both born in Texas, but my mother's side came from Tennessee. My dad's side came from Arkansas. So I used to be really proud about being from Texas. I'm not anymore. It's a lot harder these days to be proud of Texas, but I would not give up having grown up in a small town for anything. It was really good. I mean, how big was your graduating class, Ian?
Well, that's interesting because I went to a small school until my senior year. And I left from kindergarten to the first week of my senior year. I went to a fundamentalist Baptist church, which was,
Well, there you go. That explains
they
so
took
much.
all the fun out of fundamentalism, I'll tell you that. So my graduating class was actually good size. I mean, it was about 300-400 people.
Carol,
You know,
how big was your graduating class?
400 and some, which was
Oh, go
my
ahead.
husband's a year ahead of us, and mine were the two largest classes to graduate until the last couple of years, last few years.
Baby boomers.
Mm-hmm.
Had I stayed with that school, it would have been, I think, 22. And
Wow.
13 of them had gone from kindergarten
All the way through. How big was your class, Bob?
Well, I went to one of 6 high schools in Flint, and so we were the smallest. I'd say, yeah, we were the smallest high school in Flint, and I think that was 120 kids who graduated that year. But my brother, who went to a different high school a couple of years earlier, his was upwards of 500 or 600 kids. So there's the difference.
I think I had 169 in mine, and I graduated third, but we graduated by height. So that's a whole other story. So I was
But
third.
talking about like small towns, here's the town of Indian Rocks Beach wasn't even a mile wide at its widest point.
Wow.
And it was less than 2 miles long. And it was just, it's just little beach communities, but still, I mean, as its own incorporated city, it was very small, very, very small.
In thinking about family and friends who have influenced your lives, I'll start with this one. I would have to say my parents. They taught me how to live in a somewhat, Ian reminded me it is only somewhat, diverse world. My dad was a Republican. My mother was a Democrat. My dad was Church of Christ, and that's the Campbellite Church of Christ, no music, all that kind of stuff. My mother was Southern Baptist. And in that house, and I mean, my parents' churches were catty-cornered on the same block of the same street, right? We could have gone together in one car, but my dad's church always was out right on time because I guess they wanted to get to the restaurant. I don't know. So, but not my mother's. But I learned how to appreciate and love people with whom I did not disagree, with whom I did not agree, right? Which is a very handy skill to have these days. My mom taught Sunday school for 70 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. She's the most dedicated Bible scholar I've ever known. My dad was an amazing community leader and a public speaker, and he was a lay leader in his church. And so I kind of got skills from both of them that have been incredibly helpful as a minister. The other person who has been the greatest influence in my life is Alex, right? My son with autism, who has taught me patience. Oh, my, hasn't he? The importance of humor. And he gave me, and I continue to have this ability to appreciate the little things, right? I mean, it started with little developmental milestones that most parents don't see, you know, but we saw the micro things. So I'm pretty thankful for each and every one of them. So how about you, Carol? Who influenced you?
Well, as a kid, it was hard because I grew up unchurched, and I was one of, I didn't know anyone else who never ever went to church.
Really?
My dad grew up Catholic, left the church. Mom grew up Lutheran, left the church. So I would occasionally go to church with friends, you know, and could never keep my white gloves clean, or the patent leather, the white patent leather shoes. They always got all scuffed up. It's a metaphor there.
Good one.
On the sermon.
Yeah. But I had people of faith. My grandfather, my dad's dad, the only grandparent I knew as a kid, was a man of deep, profound faith, although he didn't really talk about it. But he was Catholic. He went to Mass every Sunday. When we were visiting and staying there, he'd get up and go to the very early Mass. I'd hear him coming home like at, 6:30 or something.
Mm-hmm.
Never missed church until he was in the hospital with a bleeding ulcer at the age of 68 or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, amazing man. And my dad's siblings were very faithful as well. My dad's two sisters stayed Catholic. The rest of us kids, my cousins, all around my age, within a 10 years age range roughly, all ended up in different faiths, and no one fights about it. We'll argue sports, we'll argue politics, we'll argue pretty much everything else, but faith is not something we fight about. It's like, everybody's really supportive and cool. And they've been remarkably supportive of me becoming a pastor too.
Did you grow up feeling like you were a Catholic or you were a Lutheran or?
No,
Just-
neither. I had no influence of those. When I did go to church, it was a congregational church with one friend, Episcopalian with another, and I went to a kind of a Pentecostal church for a while in high school.
Oh, that's
So I had an
the spectrum right
ecumenical
there.
upbringing.
Yes,
Yeah,
you did.
yeah,
Yes,
a little
you
bit
did.
of everything.
Wow.
What about you, Ian? What family, friends influenced you? Ian.
Yeah, I know. There's
Okay.
He's
there's
thinking.
a lot of people because but it's in looking back. At the time you don't realize it, and it's looking back, and it really was my parents. I mean, from a faith standpoint, we went to church every Sunday. It was just hands down, that's what you did. Presbyterian church. My parents were involved, but not too involved, but they had parties at the house, things like that. And they were also very involved in politics as well. And it wasn't until later on I realized a lot of the things that make me who I am today came from them. Like I said, with me sailing, we had a fishing net that we'd always drag out, a drag net that my brother and I would pull out to catch fish. And if we ever caught an abundance of fish, my parents were always quick just to grab people and say, you go get some beer, you go get a salad, I've got bread, you've got this. And we would sit there and smoke fish and have a big fish bake. And this happened almost every other night in the summertime.
Wow.
And a lot of those people that sat at the table are still friends today, many whom I call cousins and uncles. And so I realized later on in life that had a big influence on the way we opened our doors to our home My wife is the exact same way. I mean, she's from a large Catholic family, and while they had 9 kids around the table, there was always about 15 kids around the table because somebody was always sneaking in a friend through the back door.
It was that
Um,
house. That was
it
the
was that
house.
house, and we were that house, which was
Yeah.
interesting. And so there's that sense of hospitality, of listening to people's stories, getting to know people, loving them as they were and as they are. And that came from my parents, and they've got very strict, political views and religious views and all that, but never let that get in the way of a friendship. And then certainly a great man by the name of, I call him Father Anderson. He was Father Harold, Father H, Father A. He went by many different names. He was a retired Episcopal minister. And when I met him, they dragged him out of retirement to be an assistant at the Episcopal church that I was attending. And he just transformed my life. He believed in me. He pushed my thinking, never let me accept anything, question everything, dig deep, dig deep. But he also taught me how to be still, and I keep a quote, it's love with your head, think with your heart, and love with your head. And he goes, you just got to turn everything upside down. He goes, because that's what Jesus did.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a gentle, gentle soul who just passed away recently. And he was at my ordination. He gave, the blessing at my ordination. And he just taught me how to be really a pastor.
Nice.
But sometimes it's better just to listen and not say anything. Sit
Oh,
in the
yeah.
silence and let God work through you.
Yeah. What about you, Bob?
Well, one person really comes to mind, and that would be a woman by the name of Mary Perdomo. She was in the 50s. She was a missionary to Colombia, South America, with the Christian Missionary Alliance. And I'll get our connection here in a second. But she was very young, and she was from the Clare, Michigan area. They had told her that they wanted her to go to Africa, but she really felt in her heart that she was supposed to go to South America. She didn't know why, but she just really felt like she was supposed to. And so she really pushed it, and she pushed it back against the leadership who really wanted her to go somewhere else. They finally relented, and so she went to Colombia. And while she was there, she did a lot of ministry with schools and children, and they set up churches, and they were in very remote areas. And while they were there, they met this family that had been fleeing. There was a lot of unrest at the time, guerrillas fighting against each other, and one group killing another group. Some things never change, but that's what was happening. And so this family, husband and wife and 2 twin daughters, had come from the highlands across what they call this no man's land, that if you stop at this high altitude, you will probably die. So they just had to keep walking and walking and walking to get to this particular village. And so they become part of this church. And long story short, the mother asked Mary, she said, if anything ever happens to me, will you promise to take care of my girls? And she says, this always chokes me up, sorry. She says, nothing's going to happen to you. Why would you say that? No, if something happens to me, will you promise to take care of my girls? And so Mary promised that, yes, she would take care of her girls. Well, she was dying, and she passed away shortly after that. And so Mary, who was a single woman, not married, didn't have children of her own, becomes the instant mother of these 2 girls. The father really, he wasn't much help, and couldn't do a whole lot for them. So she took custody of them and brought them to the United States. As you may have guessed, one of those women was my mother. So I'm reminded often about obedience, because while others want you to go and do things because they think it's the right thing to do, what my grandmother, Mary, what she taught me was that you follow what God tells you to do, and you be obedient to that. If she hadn't, I wouldn't be here. If she hadn't done that, I wouldn't be alive. But she took those young girls, she became their mother, brought them to the United States. Long story short, I get a nice tan in the summertime, which is nice. So, and I don't know Spanish, and that's unfortunate too. But I really look to Grandma as an inspiration, a bit of a legacy, that this is what she did. She was very proud of the fact that I was called to be a minister, and she's very pleased with that. As a matter of fact, I was on a mission trip. I knew she was dying, and she died in her mid-90s. I knew she was dying, but I knew I had to go on this mission trip, and her being a missionary for so many years, I kind of felt like, well, I really need to go and do this. And I got a call from my wife about halfway through, and she said, Grandma's not going to make it. She's just not going to make it. And someone said, well, do you need to go home? Maybe we should send you home. And I said, are you kidding? She'd have my hide if I came home for her funeral while I was out on a mission trip, while I was preaching the gospel. And I got a chance on the day that she passed to tell her story through an interpreter to a group of people in this remote village on the side of a mountain in the middle of absolute nowhere in Guatemala. And the place was packed, and I don't know exactly what I said, but everybody was crying when it was over. It was just this surreal moment. So yeah.
She was there.
Yeah.
She was there. That's great. Speaking about family traditions, right? Do you have, let's start with you, Ian, a favorite family tradition or that you grew up with, or one you've started and want to pass on to your kids? I mean, what, you got one of those?
Yeah.
I think yours are like mine.
Well,
we sit around tables.
What's that?
I said, I think yours are like mine. They're kind of set around tables.
Yes, this one's around TV tables though. Every Sunday night we do pizza night, movie night, and have been doing that in our home. As a little boy, it was popcorn and chocolate milk. It was like the one time a week we got chocolate milk, and Mom made popcorn, and we'd watch Disney. All right, and Mutual of Omaha.
The Wonderful World of Disney.
The Wonderful World of Disney. And so we took that forward to do pizza night, movie night. So Sunday is a very long working day for me because I am the pizza maker. And we go, when the kids were little, it was what the movie had to be age appropriate for the youngest person. We've now upped the game a little bit since my son is PG-13. So they've gotten a little bit better movies, but it's amazing how even to this day with college age kids, we sit around and we'll watch something from their childhood and they just recite it. And
that's great.
And it's something we just always do.
Nice.
That's nice. For me, it would be family meals, right? Around my mother's dining table seats 12. And then there's another table over by the window. And when the family is there, we eat together. I mean, that's what we do. And at Christmas, we have to go somewhere else because there's 25 of us. And we go to the Baptist Church Fellowship Hall. That there's a lot of storytelling, right? I mean, the youngest kids learn who Grandpa is because Grandpa's not around anymore from those stories. And they're singing. I don't understand because we're not like this really musical family. But singing, I would never have dreamed that my nephew, who's like 45, I don't know, knows all the words to the theme from Mr. Ed. Which I can do that one too. or my sister-in-law who can sing all the words to the theme from Gilligan's Island. But that's what we do with those things. And it's just a riot. And there is a lot of laughter.
Wow.
And I would not trade that for anything. I mean, that's what I will always remember.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
When you're sitting around the table eating, which is probably, if you're like, and this is my family and my wife's family, we're exactly alike. It's about sitting around the table, eating, sharing stories. And one of the things that always happens around the table is, if it's breakfast, what are we going to have for lunch? And
Oh,
if it's
yeah.
lunch, what are we going to have for dinner?
And if it's supper, what are we doing tomorrow night?
What are we doing tomorrow for breakfast? And
Yeah, that's what we do. I mean, we always laugh and say that's what Curlies do. They sit at one meal and plan the next, which Alex is totally cool with, right? He wants to know what we're going to eat on Thursday. You know, that's just the way he is.
Nice.
What about you, Bob? Family traditions?
One particular one comes to mind that we had done since our boys were little. I have two sons; they're both grown. It's a Christmas time tradition, and we would do it kind of to kick off our Christmas season. Is we would go north of Flint, about half hour, to a little town called Frankenmuth. Frankenmuth it's designed like a little German town. They call it Little Bavaria, and they're a bit of a tourist trap. They really play up the whole German sausages and cheeses and a Hofbrau and all kinds of things like that. They'll have an Oktoberfest, and their claim to fame, though, is that they are this Christmas town all year long, the entire year. It's like you walked into the North Pole.
Like a Hallmark movie.
It's pretty much like that. So there's Christmas decorations. There's Christmas shops. There is the world's largest Christmas store called Bronner's, and you look them up online. It's acres of Christmas decorations and such. And every year we would go right after Thanksgiving. We would go to Bronner's first. Everybody gets a new ornament for Christmas. Everyone gets to pick out what they want, and that winds up on the tree. So we would have everything from, well, let's see, there was a Bigfoot ornament. I believe there was a pickle. There was a Godzilla ornament. I mean, just this weird, whatever the boys liked that year. Anything but Green Bay Packers I would allow. So yeah, so sorry.
Y'all behave.
Lions fan here. So we would do that every single year from all the way up until they were out of high school. And we even did it after they were out of high school. And we tried to do that up to now. The problem is we're all scattered. I've got one son.
Now, do they have their ornaments now where they are?
Yes,
Okay.
we saved them. When the boys went to the Navy, we boxed them all up because it just got outrageous to put all of our ornaments and their ornaments on a tree that they were never going to see. So we just said, okay, we're boxing them up. They have them now. And now we've kind of started a new tradition where we get an ornament for their sons.
Oh,
So,
cool.
but it's a little logistically weird now because we're in South Carolina. My one son is in Chattanooga. Another son is in Chicago. None of us are in Michigan anymore. So we're going to have to figure this one out. That may have, I hate to say it's died. We're going to do what we can to bring it back, but I'm not sure how. So,
well, trust me, Bob, my mom, if she were to ever cheat on my dad, it would have been with Santa Claus. She knows Frankenmuth very well.
Does she now?
She's from the South. And I will tell you this, that we do family trips every year. And every year we wind up in a Christmas store somewhere. There are Christmas stores everywhere. And my wife, speaking of tradition, she has done something very similar. Every trip we take, her souvenir is a Christmas ornament. And our Christmas tree begins to tell a story. And like, oh, remember when we went here and what's this one? And we have a pickle too that the kids always we hide from the kids.
Yeah.
Whoever can find the pickle, you know.
And that store is really cool because they have ornaments from around the world. So stuff that doesn't mean anything to us here, but in Germany it might. And so they have like that pickle. Apparently there's a legend that goes
Mhm.
with that. Or a grasshopper, if you put this on your tree, or a piece of fruit, or some weird ornament that should not be on a Christmas tree, there's a tradition behind that. And so that's
Mhm.
always been kind of fun to pick out the weird thing. And yeah, that's what we've done every year. It's all of a sudden gotten weird, so we'll just have to see what we do now.
I used to do a Christmas theme every year. So half my basement is Christmas ornaments. And now I don't even put up a tree. So
Oh.
Yeah.
it's like, whatever. Hey, how about you, Carol?
Say, you know, meal times and stuff, especially like Thanksgiving. Christmas, for a while, our Christmas dinner was lasagna because I make really good lasagna.
Nothing wrong with that.
Our younger son came in one time while I was, stirring sauce or something. He says, "Okay, so we're half German, Norwegian," and I said, "Okay, German on both dad's and my side, half Norwegian from me, Swedish, English, and Dutch on his side." Okay,
No Italians.
and none anywhere, but Christmas dinner, lasagna,
Nice.
garlic bread, the whole bit.
Nice.
We've graduated now to prime rib or some tenderloin,
Grown-up
but
food.
yeah, grown-up food. Uh, Christmas Eve, we open our gifts on Christmas Eve, which both our Martins and my family did as kids, and we continued that. And when the boys were little, the Santa Claus gifts were in the morning, Christmas morning,
Yeah.
But and so of course this past year, older son Eric and his lady Alicia, we did Zoom Christmas gifts. And it was a lot cooler than any of us expected it to be. And a lot of laughter. We're all smart Alex. and very punny. So yeah, Christmas Eve, I just love, we have a beautiful Christmas Eve service at church, which this past year, we recorded 2 nights earlier. So I wasn't exhausted by the time we were opening our gifts. That was cool. But yeah, get together with all my guys and we just have gifts and we eat ourselves sick and laugh. It's great.
All the years I was at the other church, the Christmas Eve tradition, because there was a Christmas Eve service, right? Was somebody stopped at Pizza Hut and brought a pizza up to the church.
Nice.
Yeah, and the 3 of us ate it while we were getting ready for church. Our family tradition is tamales.
Well, yeah, South Texas.
Tamales.
Nice.
Bob, can you tell us a little bit about your faith journey? I know for us, this is probably a long story, but just share a few things.
Well, I'll piggyback a little bit on what I said before. My grandmother, before I knew any of her backstory, she was just grandma, but she made sure that we went to church. I don't know if I could have relied on my parental units to do that, so she made sure that happened. So at 5 years old, I was well versed in what going to a church building was all about. I was introduced to Bible stories and flannel graphs and all that sort of thing, and it just became a part of my life. I didn't know what a Sunday was without going to church. And so I had kind of people ask, well, when were you converted? I don't know. It's a weird question because I always loved the things that they were telling us. I always felt like I was a follower of Jesus. I always felt like I loved God. I always felt like those things. but I guess it really wasn't until I was a teenager that I started to make some real decisions about what do I want to do? What kind of life do I want to live? And so somewhere in my older teenage years, I think I made that real decision to I will follow Jesus. When that was, I couldn't tell you. I don't know. I know a lot of people have that conversion moment. They can tell you the time, the date, and the moment the choir sang and the light shone from heaven, and I'm like, nope, don't have that. Don't have
I
that at all.
didn't have any light shining from heaven. Whoa,
Yeah.
what did I miss?
I mean, I've heard stories like, oh, I can tell you the exact moment, but so I was raised in the church, and I had a good understanding of how to navigate a church. I knew what it meant to be a good person. I knew what to say. I knew what to do. But it wasn't until I was a little bit older in my teenage years into my 20s before it was like, oh no, this is a serious thing. This is a relationship thing. This is something that you either do or you don't do. The halfway, the fake stuff, it just isn't, it's not worth it. You might as well not. And so I just continued along that path. And somewhere, and I think I I know exactly when I was called to ministry. That might be another question, but that was one of those choir sings, light shines type of moments. Almost heard a choir. I'm not sure, but I remember that moment very vividly, and I know what that was all about. But that was about 20 years ago is when that was, and so since then the journey has been really weird, and that might be another question for another time. But yeah, and I do owe a lot of this to my grandmother, who made sure we learned scripture. She made us memorize scripture. She was I can remember things, but I remember them in King James. I don't usually read King James now, but back in the 70s, that was the thing. So I remember them in King James version now. And I sometimes have to go back and say, oh, okay, let me put this in a more modern reading. So okay, that's what that means, but I do have to give her serious props for the fact that I'm here and alive and doing what
I like
do.
your grandmother.
I tell you what, she was all of 5 foot nothing, and she'd kick your butt. She would.
Which we all need from time to time. Yes.
She was sweet and kind, but don't mess.
Don't mess with her. Ian, short, your favorite.
Quickly, I forced to go to church as a kid. I had a lot that happened in life. But I think my school, they beat the Bible into you. Really did a great job of just sword drills and beating you. As much as I hated the place, and they physically beat you.
I forgot sword drills.
Yeah, as much as I hated the place, one thing they couldn't do is beat God out of me. And to your point, Bob, when that conversion happened, I don't know. It was a process. And in seminary, the last class I took, because I did not want to take it, was conversion. And I thought it meant, how to learn to go out on the street and beat people up and drag them into the church and do all that. And I was like, no way am I doing this. But what the class was about was, what's your story? Some people are like Paul, who had that, road to Emmaus moment, and others were like the 12, who have no idea. They just sort of got up and followed, and everything unfolded over time. And so we had to write out our story. I just started going, oh my gosh, this is where God was. This is where God was. And you just follow this beautiful path. For me though, I think the one moment someone asked me at a party and I was wasted. And he came up to me. He started AA. So he's about 2 weeks in AA, and it was a neighbor and I knew him, and he came up to me. He's like, hey, can I ask a question? I was like, yeah, sure. What? He goes, would you go to church with me? I'm like, why? He goes, well, I've never been, and I want to go. I'm like, okay. He goes, like tomorrow? And I'm like, okay. Because, I'd been drinking. And it was like, yeah, let's do it. Why not?
Sure.
But we met. We got to the corner of Gardner and Sunset Boulevard here in Los Angeles. And I said, well, there's a Presbyterian church 2 blocks this way, and there's another church 2 blocks this way. He goes, well, what's the difference? I'm like, well, that one has a rainbow flag out front, and this one I know nothing about. And he said, let's go to the one without the rainbow flag. I'm like, okay, no problem. And we walked in, and I was just, I was grabbed by the Holy Spirit, just grabbed and pulled in. I had not stepped foot in a church in about 10 years.
Wow.
And as we were walking back, I was completely transformed. Something happened in that moment. And as I was walking back, I'm like, Don, why did you ask me to go to church with you? And he said, because you're the only person who's ever talked about God without putting damned after it. And I was like, really? He goes, yeah. And so I had no idea that I was putting something out there. So whatever my faith journey was up until that point, even in these dark places where I was living, in the depths of Hollywood sin, as some people might say, testimony was being had. And that was like the turn. And I started when I needed the church a few months later, as my own life was coming undone. I went to that church, and it took me about 3 weeks to realize why everybody kept asking me out to lunch after service. And the woman I was sitting next to was very kind. She was very loving at communion. I started bawling. She was right there to hold me. Another man put his arm around me, and we just sat there. But 3 weeks later, I'm looking around. I'm like, yeah. So she's the only woman in this church. It was all well dressed, very well groomed, professional gay men. And it was a church that exuded love like I've never felt before. To this day, I've never felt a church where the Holy Spirit was that powerful, that loving, that accepting, and that's where Father Anderson was as well. And that to me is my greatest moment. And I've had some pretty breakthrough God moments, but that one was to hear him say, because you are the only person I know who's ever spoken about God without putting damned after it.
That's pretty profound.
That is.
And to not know it, literally blown away.
No clue. Wow.
I didn't tell anybody that. I mean, I kept that one to myself. I was like, ooh.
Yeah.
Carol, what about you?
I love how we're all sharing that. Well, I don't know exactly when it happened. I think it was Anne Lamott who wrote that her faith walk was much less a walk than a journey of lurches from spot to spot. I can certainly relate to that. During one of my going to church with friends phases, I did answer an altar call at the Pentecostal church. That was in high school. And when I tried to talk to some of my other friends about it, they're like, oh, are you going to go all Jesus freak on us now? And I didn't have strength to say, get out of here or anything like that. It's just like, nope. I'll go back to the way it was. But I always knew there was something, I didn't grow up in a church. I didn't have that experience, but I've come to realize that one of the moments for me that was very profound was the first episode of the first airing of A Charlie Brown Christmas. When Linus says, lights please, and we're in the same country shepherds abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. And that it struck me as so beautiful, and I went and I dug out my mom's battered Bible that she'd had since she was a little girl, and I found that and I read it over and memorized it and so on. And so I was grade school, upper elementary at that point. I don't remember, 9, 10, something like that. But I think that was really my big conversion. It was one of the more serious lurches of faith.
Nice.
I like that, a series of lurches.
Lurches of
And
faith.
Lamont's got some great stuff
Oh yeah.
that we depend on. Yeah, I think I was 10 or 11 when I was saved, which is in the Southern Baptist Church is your goal.
Mhm.
And but then in the 70s, which makes me sound so old, in the 70s, the Southern Baptist Church started coming apart.
Uh-huh.
Some serious patriarchy was jumping in, and lies were being told in pulpits.
Hmm.
And I left the church in the 70s. I went to a Baptist university and got a great education, but yeah, no, I was done, totally done. And I came back to the church after about 25 years. And it was like that first time I walked into church and thought, I'm here. It was Easter or right around Easter or something like that. And I walked in and I was overwhelmed, overcome by the Spirit grabbing a hold of me. And I thought, oh my gosh, I have missed this. I mean, I grew up, I was the church pianist, all this stuff there every Sunday, Wednesday nights. And I was just convicted, right? Using all the right words. And I thought, oh no. And we started going to church every Sunday after that. And I loved it. And I was actively involved. And I do remember I don't remember when I was called to the ministry, but I was walking the labyrinth having a rather heated conversation with God when he said, well, Dawn, you could be a minister. And I stood there and looked up at the sky. I don't know why we always look up at the sky, and said, you have got to be kidding me. Are you nuts? Which is, God and I have a relationship like that. It's okay. But, and the rest is history. And I've never felt like this was not exactly what I was meant to do. I would not trade the years of teaching school or the decades of directing an early intervention program for kids with disabilities. I mean, those were all great skills. Being a middle school teacher is the best training I ever had for dealing with church committees. I mean, it was just perfect. So, but yeah, I mean, those things are always a part of it. But yeah, I'm one of those people who was gone for a long time and came back and, getting reeled in by the Holy Spirit, who can just be that way, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
All right, I think this is our last question. Carol, I'm going to ask you first.
Oh boy.
And I think this is a hard question. What's something you love or celebrate about yourself?
Oh, you would ask me first.
Oh boy, the boys are looking up, looking
Yeah.
for inspiration.
Yikes.
My photography.
I love your photography.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a hobby that has mushroomed. My parents were both very artistic. Mom used to say Dad married her for her red sable paintbrushes.
Oh,
I
that's pretty
can't
good.
paint or draw to save my life. But I have an eye for photography.
Mhm.
And my son, our younger son, both sons have it, but Mark especially has it. He's very gifted. And I started kind of randomly posting photographs of pretty sights around town. One day I was coming home, was winter, bitter cold, fresh layer of snow on top of the frozen river as I'm coming across the bridge. So I came home, got my camera, went back to one of my favorite spots, took a nice picture of, moody tree, no leaves or anything over the frozen river. There's just snow everywhere. And I posted it and got so many likes. And one of my friends said, "You have an amazing eye for capturing beauty in your surroundings." And I was just like, "Oh, wow, cool." and it's just grown, and I've had so many people tell me that I love nature photography, and I mean that's one of the ways God speaks to us always is through nature. And I've had several people tell me that my photographs can be very spiritual for them, that they really have come to a new appreciation of God's beauty through some of my photography.
Cool. Very cool. What about you, Ian? What do you love or celebrate about yourself?
That's a tough question.
Your pizza making skills?
Which are awesome. Really
Sure
are.
they are.
I think, and my pancakes are really delicious too.
I've heard.
I'm actually a very good chef. But for me, where I personally celebrate something, I used to think that it was my rebellion against the status quo, that we can do better, we can push down the walls. I think just taking down the old and building something new, not caring if that something new gets torn down and build something new. I mean, I'm always about moving forward and trying to expand creativity. But I think, to be honest, the biggest thing I celebrate internally, and this is a confession of sorts, my willingness to try. And by that, I mean my willingness to, whatever I preach, I won't preach it unless I'm willing to do it myself. And I struggle with it. I suck at it. I fail miserably, but I still dust myself off and go at it again the next day or whatever it is. Dawn knows I've given up countless times.
Yeah.
And in the process of understanding this about myself, I've really developed a way to hear God speak. And it doesn't come through angels and, I haven't heard the rumbling voice yet, but it comes clearly in text messages from friends. In nature, I see the answers, miracles that happen around me. I'm like, okay, I got it. I hear you. And so it's this ability to walk that faith journey, not to be this moralistically perfect person, which I'll never be, but to be a Christ follower to the best of my ability, knowing that it's my faith that allows me to take risks. And I don't make much money at it, but the bread is on the table every night,
Yeah. How about you, Bob? What's something you celebrate or love about yourself?
Top that one, Bob. Come on.
Well, I'm going to toss the towel in then now. Probably the thing that I celebrate about myself is the thing that I have hated myself for most of my existence, and that's my inability to do stuff. I always thought, I don't know how to do this, I don't know how to fix that, I don't know how to do this, and mostly
That's
I blamed
why
it
God
on.
created YouTube.
Well, it was this idea. Well, other guys know how to fix stuff. I don't know how to fix stuff. I wasn't raised with my dad, so I never got a lot of hands-on stuff. So I always had to learn on my own. I always had to figure out how to fix things. I broke a lot of things. I actually broke an engine on a car, the literal engine.
Okay.
Not a part of the engine, the engine. Broke it. I mean, I just broke it because I'm an idiot.
That's a gift.
It is. It is a gift and a curse. But I learned what not to do. And so over a period of years, I have learned how to do some stuff. I can now
A
make
lot of
my,
stuff, I bet.
I can make my way around. If something's broken, I don't usually freak out. I can, okay, there's got to be a solution here. Let's look at it. And I find that I'm able to do that a lot quicker and easier now. Well, let me retract the quicker part. I always factor in like ×3. If it takes the average guy an hour to do it, it's going to take me 3, but I'll get it done, and it'll be right, and it'll be clean, and it'll look good, but it's going to take me longer. That's the frustrating part, but I kind of pat myself on the back and say, no, you can do that. You can fix that. You can figure that out. There's always a solution, and it's not always a mechanical thing. Sometimes it's a problem, a relationship problem. Sometimes it's I don't know how to finish this sermon. I don't know what's next. And it's always there just by working the problem. And it just, when you're done, there's this sense of satisfaction, like, yeah, you did that, and that's good. That's a good thing. So don't kick yourself, be thankful that you were able to get it done.
I would have to say for me, it's my sense of humor. I mean, I can find the humor in almost anything, including a trip like on Sunday night to the emergency room or putting a funeral together. I mean, I really can't. Part of it has been honed by being married to a comedian. But, and I mean, Bob, you don't know. I mean, literally, I married a man who was a comedian. So, not
I can respect that.
Yeah, funny guy. But, I mean, yeah, but that ability, and it has come in handy a lot. Just to diffuse situations, to relate to people, to start conversations, sometimes to end conversations that need to be ended, that kind of thing. But yeah, I've always thought my dad was that way, and it's been very helpful and useful, and it got me through a lot of mom moments that I wanted to just cry or quit, that kind of thing. Yeah, just the humor. So, all right, we've been at this a while, and I don't know about you, I have learned a lot.
Quite a bit.
I mean, I've known Carol for a long time. I've known you.
You
Ian,
keep saying that.
There it is. I have no idea how long.
Yeah,
we've
that's
known
how
each
long
other.
we've known each other.
I
Haven't a
can't
clue.
remember.
It's been
I
4.5
don't remember
years.
not knowing you,
Yeah. Right.
Ian, I've known you for what?
4.5
5
years.
years?
Yeah.
About 4 or 5 years. So, and Bob, I'm really enjoying getting to know you, and I really like your grandma.
Yeah.
I do
And I met Bob in Michigan. We both served in the same small town community. We both had churches there.
Okay.
We served on, we had a little pastoral
Ministerial Alliance.
Yeah.
alliance.
Yeah.
Um,
Few lunches at the winter inn.
a few lunches, and yeah. And
Women
so
don't usually go to those Ministerial Alliance things.
we had
Get a couple.
we had
Depends.
Lutheran priest, yeah.
Depends.
How was this for you?
Good.
Good.
I wasn't sure how this was going to flow, but now it seems pretty clear what we're doing here, and I like that.
Yeah, me too. And I think actually we talked about doing this for 4 weeks, but Ian brought up, we could
We can
make this
start
last
stretching
all
this
summer.
out.
So,
And part of the point is we want to let people know who we are as we start moving forward with the Anamesa Communion, that the space between us, be it cyberspace or just our own personal space, the Holy Spirit is there and alive, and God is moving us, and hopefully it will move others to join, to get to know who we are, and find a home, however that home is. But
whatever it looks like.
yeah, we're
Yeah.
moving into a really interesting creative space. For those of you who are listening here in the future, as we post this later, I do a thing called November, KNOW, November, where I spend the month of November meeting a new person, a total stranger, and getting to know their story. And I've been doing this for 3 years now. And it's sort of helped bring us to this place where we are today, this place of Anamesa, to be in this space between us and to get to know one another, to see how we share more things in common, and we have differences. And it's not until you sit down and have the conversations like we had here today that you find your commonality with us or with one another, about sitting around a table with family and hashing out, issues. This is the place where you'll always be welcome. All four of us in this recording here open our hearts and our arms and our minds to receive you and to help shepherd and guide you as you need to be shepherded. And what's the next topic for next time, Dawn? Do we want to give that away, or?
I kind of think we'll probably have another week of where are you from?
Ooh, awesome.
I mean, and because we really think about now, if I had to say, where am I from? I wouldn't say Texas, right? I'd say small town, big family that likes to eat, theologically diverse, I mean, that's because I think when we talk about understanding where people come from, it's sort of that where they are coming from. And it's all those things that influence who we are. And those things matter a lot more than the fact that I was born in, Sinton, Texas, and Bob was born in Clare, Michigan, yeah, so probably so. The topics are really good for these, and I really do like the idea of stretching it out. I'm not stretching the sermons out, but these discussions I think could last all summer.
They could.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's tough to shut us up.
I thought we did really well.
Not too bad.
I think so too. I think
So
so too.
join us next time, which will probably be next week. So thank you from
Excellent.
Anamesa. I'm going to say Anamesa. I can't help it.
We're from the Midwest.
That's okay. It's not how you say it, it's how you live it.
That's right.
That's
we'll
right.
see you soon. Blessings. Bye.
To you.
Bye.
Goodbye.